Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. I ngā mana, I ngā reo, I ngā rangatira, tēnā tātou katoa. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, shalom. I mua o te atua, he iwi kotahi tātou. Before God, we are one people. May his peace be ours. Our service of remembrance now begins with the arrival of the Guidon of Queen Alexandra's Mounted Rifles Regiment. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, please stand.
March on! The Guidon!
Salute. Present. Arms. Escorts. Shoulder. Arms.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the national anthems of the State of Israel and New Zealand.
Present. Arms.
כל עוד בלבב בנימה נפש יהודי הומייה ולפתי מזרח קדימה עין לציון צופיה עוד לא התקווה בת שנות 2000 להיות עם חופשי בארצנו ארץ ציון וירושלים, להיות עם חופשי בארצנו, ארץ ציון וירושלים.
E oa atua o ngā iwi mātura a ta whakarongona me aroa noa kia hua ko te pai kia tautoa ta whai, mana a ke tia mai, a o te aroa. God of nations, at thy feet, in the bonds of love we meet. Hear our voices, we entreat. God, defend our free land. God, Pacific's triple star, from the shafts of strife and war, make her praises heard afar. God, defend New Zealand.
Guidon. Shoulder, hand.
Thank you. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. I now invite the New Zealand Ambassador to Israel, His Excellency Jonathan Kerr, to deliver our welcome.
Enga mana, enga reo, rao rangatira I kone, ngā iwi o Israel, ngā iwi o Australia, me ngā karangatanga maha I hui hui mai nei, koutou I haere mai tāwhiti, ki te tautoko tēnei hui nui, te maumaharatanga ki ngā rautau o te mahihara, I tēnei whenua o Beersheba, mai amato o Aotearoa New Zealand, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Prestigious guests, speakers of note, important chiefs gathered, people of Israel, people from Australia, and the many nationalities gathered here. You who have come to support this occasion, the memories of 100 years ago of conflict, at this place that is Beersheba. From the people of Aotearoa, New Zealand, I greet you, I greet you, I greet you all. It is my honour and privilege, on the occasion of the centenary of the Battle of Beersheba, to welcome you to the New Zealand service at Tel Beer Sheva. I wish to acknowledge the presence among us today of their Excellencies, the Right Honourable Dame Patsy Reddy, Governor-General of New Zealand, and Sir David Gascoigne. His Excellency Mr Benjamin Netanyahu and Mrs Sarah Netanyahu, the Honourable Malcolm Turnbull MP, Prime Minister of Australia, and Mrs Lucy Turnbull, His Excellency Mr Mekin Mustafa Kemal Erkim, Ambassador of the Republic of Turkey, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs Mrs Tsipi Hotovali, Mr Ruvik Danilovich, Mayor of Beersheba, Ministers, Ambassadors and members of the Diplomatic Corps, senior military officers and all present and former service personnel, representatives of all those countries involved in the Sinai-Palestine campaign, and all our honoured guests. Welcome. 100 years ago, at almost this very moment, the battle for the strategic position of Tel el Saba, or as we know it today, Tel Beer Sheva, was coming to a conclusion. this ancient mound, having already witnessed some 6,000 years of history, including the forefathers of the Jewish nation, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, also witnessed one of the signature battles of this campaign in this region during the First World War. You are sitting and standing on the very ground over which men fought and fell. From where we are right now, it is easy to understand the importance of this place in the Battle for Beersheba. Behind me is the plain over which the Australian Light Horse began their charge toward the town. And behind me to your left advanced the New Zealand Mounted Rifles. It took 6 hours of fighting to take this position against fierce resistance from its Ottoman defenders. Many of our men had fought at Gallipoli. The war would take them further to such places as Ankara, Jaffa, Jerusalem, Salt, Amman, and Megiddo. But as we gather today on this historic and sacred site, we look forward as well as backwards. We give thanks for our Anzac bonds. They are as important now as a century ago. We pay our respects for the losses of the foes of yesterday, for they are the friends of today. And the young men of a young nation, far from home, encountered the descendants of an ancient people of an ancient land. Our forebears recognised in some of the Jewish communities they encountered in this holy land the same pioneering spirit that characterised New Zealand's own rural life. They would forge treasured friendships that would last to this day between peoples and between nations, between New Zealand and Israel. Many New Zealanders have made a pilgrimage of more than 16,000 kilometres to be here. But all of us today are walking in the footsteps of our forebears, of our countrymen. We are saluting their courage, remembering their sacrifice, honouring their memory, participating in their legacy, and rediscovering our history together. Nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I now invite Her Excellency, the Right Honourable Dame Patsy Reddy, GNZM, QSO, Governor-General of New Zealand, to deliver our first commemorative address.
I ngā mana, i ngā reo, o ene takiwā, me te haukainga o Aotearoa, tēnā koutou katoa. Haere mai tātou ki te whakamahara i a rātou nā toa, nā rakokawa o ngā pākanga o mua. Tēnā koutou nā toa, nei rā taku kupu, kia kaha, kia maia, kia manawa nui, hapatia ake tō mana toa. I acknowledge the authorities and representatives of Israel and New Zealand. Let us gather today to remember and to commemorate those who fought in battles in World War I. Greetings also to the soldiers. We wish you bravery, strength and endurance. I specifically acknowledge the Honourable Malcolm Turnbull MP, Prime Minister of Australia, and Mrs Lucy Turnbull. His Excellency Mr Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel, and Mrs Sarah Netanyahu, Mr Rubik Danilovich, Mayor of Beersheba, ministers, ambassadors, members of the diplomatic corps, military representatives, distinguished guests, and friends from New Zealand, Australia, and Israel. It's an honour to be here today and to be joined by so many New Zealanders, Australians, and Israelis as we remember momentous events of 100 years ago. Today, we gather to honour the men of the New Zealand Mounted Rifles Brigade, the Rarotongan Company, and the New Zealand companies of the Imperial Camel Corps, who served in the Middle East. 100 years ago today, members of the New Zealand Mounted Rifles Brigade seized this hill, then known as Tel el Saba, after a skilled and daring operation against Ottoman forces. From this vantage point, we can appreciate the courage and determination required to capture this imposing and dominating hill, and appreciate how their success opened the way for the renowned charge of the Australian Light Horse and the capture of Beersheba. The valiant efforts of the New Zealand Mounted Rifles here and at other locations, most notably Ayankara near Tel Aviv on 14 November, have largely been overshadowed by our commemorations of the tragedies of Gallipoli and on the Western Front in France and in Belgium. Today, we're bringing their contribution out of the shadows and giving them the recognition they deserve. 1917 was the hardest year of the war for New Zealand and its allies. On the Western Front, New Zealand experienced an unprecedented ordeal by fire, including 2 costly victories and a bloody disaster at Passchendaele on 12 October. During that year, the New Zealand Armed Forces suffered more than 5,500 fatalities, a cruel loss for a country of just over 1 million citizens. Even the architect of New Zealand's war effort, Defence Minister Sir James Allen, began to wonder if the country was being bled to death. Beersheba was therefore a rare and welcome victory, a boost to a war-weary nation which seemed to be nearing the end of its reserves of fortitude and manpower. New Zealand's participation in the First World War had a profound impact on how our nation saw its place in the world. We became more determined than ever to ensure that our national interests would be properly balanced against the good of the common cause. There was a renewed commitment to stand against unprovoked military aggression, to work to uphold human rights, and to seek international cooperation in defence of peace. These principles have shaped New Zealand's foreign and defence policies in the 100 years that followed. They've led our nation to take an active part in the League of Nations and later the United Nations, as well as other international initiatives to preserve and promote peace. New Zealand now participates in the international campaign against terrorism, initiatives to prevent the spread of weapons of mass destruction, and peace support operations, including long-term contributions to regional peacekeeping initiatives in the Middle East. New Zealand has been a supporter of Israel since its establishment in 1948. We are fundamentally committed to Israel's right to live in peace. To this end, over 2,000 New Zealand troops have served in peacekeeping roles on Israel's borders since 1948. New Zealand's one of 7 countries that serves in both the United Nations Truce Supervisory Organisation in the Golan Heights and in the multinational force and observers in the Sinai. Today, I'd also like to acknowledge the gracious support of the Government of Israel and the municipality of Beersheba, which has made it possible to hold this service of remembrance. We're also grateful to the Israel Nature and Parks Authority for agreeing to this commemoration ceremony in this UNESCO World Heritage Site. I hope that today's commemorations inspire a greater awareness of the Sinai Palestine campaign in New Zealand. By honouring the part played by our soldiers in events that changed the course of history, we're helping to ensure that this place of great antiquity will forever remain part of the heritage of both our nations. Ka mumahara tonu tātou ki a rātou. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Ka pai. Sergeant David Few of the New Zealand Army Band will now sing Coming Home, accompanied by our musicians.
Every soldier who gave their lives lives forever. Every soldier who fought the fight echoes in our minds. All the wounded and the brave, the ones God couldn't save. We salute your courage, coming home with pride, coming home with heads held high, coming home from lands afar, coming home to your arms. Oh, those heroes who defend our flag will live on forever. Oh, those heroes, both young and old, that soldier unto unknown. From across a changing world, we live in the hope that you'll come back home. Coming home with pride, coming home with heads held high, coming home from lands afar, coming home to your arms. I'm coming home. Coming home with pride, coming home with heads held high, coming home from lands afar, coming home to your arms, coming home from lands afar, coming home to your arms.
Thank you. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I now invite His Excellency Mr Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of the State of Israel, to deliver our second commemorative address.
Governor General Patsy Reddy, before I say welcome to Israel to you and to Sir David, I want to tell you that in my opinion, this is the first time that Maori was officially spoken on Tel Sheva. It is beautiful. It will be long remembered. I want to acknowledge equally Prime Minister of Australia, Malcolm Turnbull, and his wife, Lucy, and all the distinguished guests that have come here from New Zealand, from Australia, and of course from Israel, and from other lands. We're remembering an act of courage that changed history. The indomitable spirit of the soldiers of New Zealand here, and the Australian Light Horse right there, changed history. It is something that didn't take very long, in a few hours, but the pivot, the hinge of fate moved at that point. It required resources of courage and determination and resolution precisely because they were facing very fierce, strong, and determined troops. This makes their achievement all the greater. We are here standing in the city of Abraham. 4,000 years ago, our forefathers came here. Now, because of that day, 100 years ago, you see the modern city of Beersheba, the cyber headquarters, with the future in our hands. We have peace, prosperity, and security, but it was made possible because of those heroes. We always remember that. We remember the sacrifices of these young men from New Zealand and from Australia. We are sister democracies. We, New Zealand and Israel, have the advantage of being small relative to Australia. So I would have said our three small democracies, but that would be a gross misstatement. But I would say our three valiant democracies who have created prosperity and hope for their peoples, and by cooperating with each other for many other peoples. This forged a bond of friendship that began in Gallipoli between New Zealanders, Australians, and the young Jewish fighters who were the first Jewish fighting force in history. I spoke about that earlier in the cemetery. But I want to mention something else that happened that saved many, many lives, because each life, each drop of New Zealand blood that was shed here and Australian blood that was shed there is precious blood. But it could have been a far greater tragedy for those families and for many more families. Were it not for Aaron Aronson, a brilliant scientist and agronomist, and his sister Sarah, and their comrades, who established an intelligence ring that gave General Allenby the information and that said, you must come here. Don't go there. Don't go again to Gaza. Come to Beersheba. The British assessment was that because of the contribution of Aronson, tens of thousands of lives were saved. And Sarah Aronson, who took her life under severe torture rather than spill out these secrets, we remember too. Sarah's a name I like, I have to tell you. So Sarah, the wife of Abraham, was here 4,000 years ago. Sarah Aronson was here, even though she wasn't 100 years ago. And we, the great democratic allies of New Zealand, Israel, and Australia, are here today as we celebrate the future. We remember the past and we celebrate the future. But even so, even with that contribution of intelligence, you still needed courage to face entrenched troops here and entrenched troops there. Courage was required. And courage, of all the human values, is the most important one because it guarantees all the rest. There was plenty of courage that day. And of those fallen New Zealand soldiers and the fallen Australian Light Horse, we can say in the words of a man of extraordinary courage, King David, they were swifter than eagles, they were stronger than lions. We shall always be indebted to them, and we will always remember them. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Your words were very kind. The New Zealand Defence Force Maori Cultural Group will now sing our first waiata, Te Atu. Thank you. I now invite Warrant Officer Class 1 Mario Ropatini to deliver a poem by New Zealand poet Rangi Faith.
A tēnā no tātou i hikama. This man is in his garden. He works on silently, knowing he cannot be touched. He has cleared the old tendrils from the beam frame and placed them in the barrow. He works silently. He remembers his mates. He clears the beans from the frame, remembering the cry, the noise, the mud. He is in his garden. He cannot be touched. He works on silently. Toda.
Thank you, Warrant Officer Class 1 Ropatini. We now come to the part of the service where wreaths will be laid by official representatives. The first wreath will be jointly laid by Her Excellency, the Right Honourable Dame Patsy Reddy, Governor-General of New Zealand, on behalf of the people of New Zealand, and the Honourable Malcolm Turnbull MP, Prime Minister of Australia, on behalf of the government and people of the Commonwealth of Australia. His Excellency Mr Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of the State of Israel, on behalf of the government and the people of the State of Israel. His Excellency Mr Mekin Mustafa Kemal Okum, Ambassador for the Republic of Turkey. Major General Peter Kelly, MNZM, Chief of Army New Zealand, on behalf of the New Zealand Defence Force, and Lieutenant General Angus Campbell, DSC AM, Chief of Army Australia, on behalf of the Australian Defence Force. Mr Clive Collingwood, Royal New Zealand Returned and Services Association, accompanied by Lieutenant Colonel Justin Patsy and Lieutenant Colonel Bill Twiss, on behalf of all New Zealand veterans. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, would you please stand for the Ode of Remembrance, which will be followed by the last post, 1 minute's silence, and the playing of Rouse. The Ode of Remembrance will be now recited by Warrant Officer Bernie Rehana and Mr Clive Collingwood.
E kore rātau e kaumātua tia. Pēnei ia tātou kua māhua nei. E kore hoki rātau e ngoi kore aha koa pēhia i ngā ahuatanga o te wā. I te hekenga atu o te rā, tai noa ki te aranga mai i ta ata, ka mau mahara tonu tātou ki a rātau. Ka mau mahara tonu tātou a ki a rātau.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. The going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. We will remember them.
shoulder, hand.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing as the Guidon of Queen Alexandra's Mounted Rifles Regiment is now marched off. At the same time, our Maori cultural group will sing one of New Zealand's most treasured waiata, Po Ataro. Now is the hour.
March off the Guidon!
Sir! Escorts to the Guidon. General salute. Present. Hunt. Escort. Shoulder. Hunt.
God grant to the living grace, to the departed rest, to the peoples of New Zealand, Israel, Australia, United Kingdom and Turkey, unity, peace and concord forevermore. Amen. Please be seated. The New Zealand Defence Force contingent will now perform the haka he toa, He toa is dedicated to all who lost their lives here in 1917. An important part of the haka denotes a famous Maori proverb that if a warrior should fall, another is ready to take his place. We are the warriors who have come and returned to commemorate our fallen, who rest within the bosom of this land. We will remember them. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our service. Please stand for the departure of the VIP party.